Welcome to the Evolution Revolution. I'm Mark Johnston. In this podcast, we explore stories of resilience, reinvention, and finding the warrior within. In this episode, a remarkable human being by the name of Adam Bureau, formerly a foster parent, ends up in a car accident, pain medication, which, as often does, becomes addiction, and yet is now a successful businessman and a town councillor in a small town in Canada. Let's hear his journey. I have the great pleasure of welcoming Adam Bureau to the episode today. Adam, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I've known you for a little while now, Adam, and I'll share as a very successful businessman, counselor. You work in several sectors that impact people, basically from everything from the political stage to business. And I see you around town regularly shaking hands, saying hello to people. You have a way to connect, Adam Bureau. I'll say that with great.
One of my biggest pleasures in life is talking to people and learning their stories and how they're getting on in life. And I think it's absolutely amazing that I have that opportunity to talk to so many people.
Beautiful, Adam. Thank you for that. And of course, we start this episode the same way every show. And I'm going to say this very openly with great gratitude, Adam. At this point of your evolution, Adam Bureau, what is your message to the world?
Mine is, I believe working together, we can make a better place. And I think that is happening now, but that is my message.
Glad to hear this. And of course, the usual pattern is then we backtrack, Adam, to young Adam, as I like to say,
Yes.
and get a general sense of how you got to where you got to today and how you discovered this message, which beautifully said to an audience around the world. Tell me a little bit about young Adam and early parts of your journey.
For me, I was never good in school. I ended up quitting school in grade 9, and I went for 3 months in high school. I met my ex-wife back when I was 16, and we ended up having a child. And so I worked full time from then and realized that I'm really not good working for people. I've been fired from every job that I ever had. So I ended up opening my own store when I was 18, and I had a choice to either become a mail person or run my own business. And I talked it over with my wife at the time, and she said, "How long do you want to be a mail person for?" Because we know that's probably not going to last. So I took a shot and started from there. After that, we ended up buying our first house when we were 23. And what I opened was a little used CD and VHS store, because back at the time, like, CDs were just coming out. And we ended up having another 2 children. So I have 3 daughters, and we became foster parents as well. My wife wanted to stay home, but also help in the community. So we thought that was a great role.
Beautiful, Adam. Thank you for that. I know getting to know somebody is always an adventure. And as I get more and more to familiar with your journey, it gets more and more inspiring. Now, you hold a very important role in the town of Cobourg as one of our wonderful counselors on town council. You get to oversee and guide policy for those of us that live in town. And I think there's just such an energy when it comes to a small town, but with all the same challenges and all the same needs of any community. What is it like as town councillor where you get to participate at this level?
When I first started back in 2018, on my first term, I'll tell you, it was such a learning curve. Day and night, I was working so hard just to figure out the system, how everything worked. I had a little bit of experience being the chair of the downtown business improvement area, but it wasn't like this. And it was such an eye-opener that if you listen to the people and what their needs and concerns are, there's ways to make that happen in council. And to me, it's so inspiring that I get to work for 20,000 people and make things happen.
Well, and you're one of the most liked, I will say that, in town here, Adam. And I think part of that is your open heart, the fact that you do take time and care to connect with people when that often doesn't happen in a position like this. Deep gratitude for the way you journey as one of our key politicians here in town. But also on a personal level, you've had your own journey. I think it sounds like
Yeah.
the fact that you say, I've been fired from every job, different words, but you found your place, Adam. I think this is where my head goes, that not only from a business perspective, but also representing us in council and the good work that you do. But we all go through challenges. And I think that's one of the common elements we first talked about when we sat down for coffee is any community has its own challenges, and we're no exception to that. But it's how we approach these challenges, I think, one would say. From your position on town council, some of the more recent challenges that are happening here in town, we're growing. And with growth comes growing pains and challenges and new hurdles to get through. And I love that you say if we work together, we can get through these things.
Yeah.
How do you approach some of the more challenging situations that any community goes through?
Well, from a lot of my own experiences. So, for instance, the opioid crisis that we're going through, the homelessness, the drug addiction, the mental health. When back in 2002, I was in a pretty bad car accident. And after that being recovered, I was addicted to drugs from our doctors prescribing painkillers and stuff like that. I was on 380s of Oxycontin a day, as well as 10 Percocets and muscle relaxers. So in order to get off of those, I had a decision. I didn't go through any medical help getting off. I had to do this on my own. And I'm not saying that for everybody. If you are trying to get off, please use the doctors because they're the ones that are going to guide you the best. And I had a decision to make, either live my life the way I was going or make that change. And I finally did. It was the worst time of my life and getting through the addiction. And when I finally got out of it, that's when I opened the store downtown Cobourg. And because I had to do something, had to have a purpose. And I think with those experiences of going through that drug addiction, I was on them for about 5 years. And it was between night and day, not being able to make good decisions, family time, all of that. So I think with those experiences that I had, it brings it up to today with what a lot of the population's going through now.
Major challenges in it. Coming through the pandemic, Adam, as we all know, that was such a journey for everyone. There's the universality of something like this, regardless of how your approach and attitude towards the pandemic. We've all been through something as a planet. And then on a smaller scale, in a small community such as Cobourg, we see some of the ramifications of recent years that we've been through and the challenges we've come through. That's something to note, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at that time, a couple things happened. I think we started to look out for our neighbors more. We started to, even though we had to stay apart, I think like Zoom and online, FaceTime, everything, I think all that kind of brought us together, even though we couldn't be physically together. And I think that was one of the biggest positives coming out, looking after our neighbors, looking after or checking in on people. And I think that carries on to today.
Well, there's a silver lining, one might say. And I think as we see evolution in a community, to your point, there is the drug addiction, there is the experiencing homelessness. Those are things, and of course, mental health is often attached to many of these byproducts of people going through their own struggles. What is your thought from a recovery perspective, Adam, having achieved a new level in your life? And this is really part of the purpose of the Evolution Revolution, is to discuss with people, what is it that you've been through? How did you get through it? And how are you living today because of it, really, at the end of the day? If I could borrow the metaphor to some extent of the pandemic and how that's impacted us in a positive way, in your own journey, the journey through addiction into recovery, how has that experience changed you for the better?
I think for me, it gave me a second lease on life. It really opened my eyes to really wanting to give back. Through my whole life, it was just work, support the family. That was my whole focus on life. After coming off the drugs and figuring out what I want to do again, and because technically I should have died in that accident, but I did. And so I thought this was when I started thinking clearer. I thought this was the time for me to start giving back to my community. And that's how kind of it transitioned into one other thing that I would like to say is Cobourg's such a welcoming place. Like it when I first opened, it was a rocky battle, but once you got to know everybody, it's like a family. And so they're all there to support you and you're there to support them. And it just makes you want to do better, if that makes any sense.
It makes great sense, Adam. And I think all of us have been through adversity at some point in our journey. That's
Yeah.
part of being a human being. And then there's the global situation, which is a shared challenge with climate change and all sorts of other things that we have to
Yes.
face that we haven't faced at this level before. But that silver lining, and with great respect, one of our guests earlier on the Evolution Revolution was Wendy Murphy, who went through a horrific car crash at 18, lost her best friend, and has been journeying with a wheelchair ever since. She's now of an age where she's been a person on the planet because of that turning point. An advocate. She was on City TV. You may recall she was the first, I believe, on-air personality on any news station in North America that was in a wheelchair. Went on to win a beauty pageant with only other able-bodied models on stage, and quite the achievement. And a lot of this, she points to that moment, horrific as it was,
Yes.
that put her on a trajectory, I guess. And would you say the same when it comes to a journey in recovery, that because of the challenges we've been through, because of the hopelessness that comes, because of the health issues that arise because of this, but somehow on the other side of it, people come out with more awareness, a different appreciation for life?
There was that pivotal moment. And I think you're right, everybody goes through that. Mine was, and it's a sad story, but I reflect on it a lot. So I was coming home from the doctors with my new prescription of painkillers, and I stopped at the beach and I looked and I was like, I can't live my life like this anymore. So I have two choices. I can either end it, or because it's not fair to my wife and kids and the foster kids, and or I could just stop and move on with my life. And that moment really, it took me about 2 to 3 hours to figure that out. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all the way. And
Yeah.
and so I made the decision, got home. To be honest, I flushed the drugs down the toilet and I was like, I'm done. And that was the pivotal moment.
Beautiful. Adam, what was that moment like, actually flushing that poison away?
Scary, scary because you're addicted. It's one of the worst addictions to have. It takes over your whole body physically. So it's really hard to put into words how your body feels. It's like pain, nausea, sweating, all wrapped into one. And it's horrific, to be honest. That's why there's other ways to do it than going through what I did.
Fair enough. And I know the encampment that we have here in town, that is something that's
Yes.
talked about every day. There are people struggling, and
Yeah.
yet there are some that are supportive of that, some that are less supportive of that. At the end of the day, there's still a reality that this is something that is happening. It's real, it's present. And the idea of the hope for people to find that moment, Adam, where they do make a different choice. And for some, sadly, that never comes. For some, it does. Do you feel almost an obligation as somebody who's come through addiction into recovery to help others? Is there something that happens when you come through that tunnel to the other side where you feel a need to give back?
I think it comes from all the help that was given while you were addicted. And I think that stems when you're finally free of that. And you're like, yes, if it wasn't for this certain people, or if it wasn't for this group of people, I wouldn't be here. And so I think that carries on once you're done. And it just makes you want people that are addicted. And you're like, I can help. Just let's talk. But a lot of people, you're right, you said, they either don't want help or they're not in the place in their lives where they do want help. So that's a hard thing. If it wasn't for that day, if it was like 2 months before that day, I would have said, no, you guys are crazy. There's no way I'm getting off of this.
Yes.
Yeah. So it
A
has
brilliant
to come
turn,
to that.
brilliant evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. And those that are lucky enough to find that, I think the idea of living your best possible life and the gift that comes on the other side, I would think, where you are in a place where those choices are no longer yours, that you've made better choices, you've built community, you're well respected, one of the kindest people in town. Everybody seems to recognize that Adam's always out there with a hand stretched out. And I think we need more of that in the world. On a global level, look what's happening, politics all over the planet, not just the States, Canada, but all over the world. From your perspective in the position that you hold currently, Adam, how can politicians do a better job? Because you seem to have figured out a recipe or a way of moving through your day that makes an impact.
One, I think the policies start needing to be changed from the top. I think that we need more mental health facilities. I think that's a key role. A lot of people that do have mental health issues end up addicted to drugs, and not all of them, but a lot. In my From my time of knowing people and talking with them, I think that's, how can I put it? I think that's more of starting from the policies, having more mental health facilities, drug rehabilitations. And one of the other things that I did notice is if a person's not ready to quit drugs, but they ended up going to jail on a bad note, when they get out of jail, you see them more healthy, more happy because they're off the drugs. They've had 3 meals a day, they sleep, a routine where they're not getting on the street. And I think we need, not sending them to jail, but I think we need more facilities that will help like that.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Support and structure and expertise, I would think, Adam. These are the ideas that I'm hearing as you share that. Thank you. What would your advice be to those that are struggling today? Because this is something that everybody at some point has seen someone they care about or someone on the street in their neighborhood experiences. For those that are still in that space that might be listening to this conversation today, what advice do you have?
You're right. One key note there is when somebody who is addicted to drugs, it just doesn't affect them. It affects their whole entire family and friends and everything. My advice would be, when you're ready, come get help, no matter what. Go to the police station, talk to a friend, talk to a family member, but you got to make that choice. So there's more to life than drugs, more to life. So much more happiness out there rather than fake happiness and drugs.
Amen to that, Adam. Thank you for that inspiration. There's a saying out there, I might not get it exactly right, but the idea of addiction is giving up everything for one thing, whereas recovery is giving up one thing to get everything you had.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful sentiment, no?
Yes. I love that. Yep.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now, just in terms of your own aspirations as Adam Bureau, you've already made a difference here in town. People obviously know who you are. You're connecting with people on a daily basis. Let's look down the road a year or two for Adam Bureau as an individual, less counselor, less business owner. Just where does Adam want to go in the world?
To be honest, now that my children are older and they're all independent women living on their own, and to me, it gives me more free time to go and travel. Like, I never did any of those things. Being a parent at 16, it was always work. Now I like to take the time, a week here in my schedule. I'll just take off on a last minute deal and go and enjoy myself. And I think those are needed breaks, to be honest. Sometimes, for sure. Yeah.
I have a former teacher that once said, can you imagine if each of us felt our own worthiness, Adam, and imagine what that world would be like if we each took care of ourselves and of each other? Do you think a lack of worthiness is sometimes underneath some of the challenges people go through? And ultimately, how do you feel you found your own worthiness?
To be honest, that's a good question. I honestly don't feel that. I know a lot of people and there's a lot of compliments and stuff, but I still feel I have more to do and more, how can I put it? I don't think I'm there yet on fully self-worthiness. I think I still have a lot of work to do. Again, I'm not just used to running a business and with family. So to have all this relatively new thing since 2018 with council really changed my life, and it really tested every kind of part of my being, whether it be having a thick skin or extending my time or sacrificing my personal time, which is, I find it builds more character down the road. That's what I'm working on, is more character building, more learning, always learning. love to learn.
Mhm.
And being on council gives me that opportunity.
Well, and I appreciate that. You also obviously interact with many sectors in town in your position as counselor. From a business perspective, times have been tough for many industries. You can pretty well pick any industry over the last few years. There's been some major challenges
Yeah.
people are trying to get through. Because you have the opportunity as a business owner and counselor to see both sides of the fence, I would say, what's your advice for those going into business? Because that, much like recovery, there's a little bit of a leap of faith, but it takes a lot of hard work. And
Yes.
so those that are thinking of either here in town or elsewhere have a dream, have a passion for something, and you've done this, Adam. What would your advice be to other business owners?
Yeah. Also had some failed businesses too. So I've learned from experience going along the way. For
Mm,
me, it's your location. Research that location. A lot of
mm,
people that do open up, for instance, in downtown Cobourg, are it's like,
mhm,
oh, how come our street isn't blocked off for the events? Or how come the rent's cheaper on this side and not this side? And so many different factors. So to me, really focus on that location. And you're going to have to
mhm,
make adjustments. If you're not on the main drag, then you're going to have to pay more for advertising, which makes up for the
mhm,
rent,
mhm,
less rent that you got to pay. Other factors is when you first open, always keep that money aside. Never
mhm.
go full tilt. Have a good business plan and stick to it. That's a major thing. I know there's always going to be changes and ups and downs, but the first 3 months of business is not going to dictate your longevity.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
so a lot of people will open up and it looks great, everything's great, but they really don't understand what their customer base wants until they're in there for 2 to 3 months. And
Mhm.
whenever a new business opens in a small town, it's going to be slammed. Everybody wants to check it out, which is great. And
Yeah.
that's where you learn. It's really a big learning curve for that.
Mm. I love
That's
this, Adam. It's inspiring to know that there's a plan that you put into place, but also to be flexible and be open and
yeah.
patience obviously is part of that too. I'm hearing from your position in the political scene. Do you feel larger communities, Greater Toronto, Kansas City, Miami, what could those centers learn from what happens in a smaller town?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think what they could take, no matter how big the city is, I think they could take
Mhm,
away from us is what a small town is. I think they could take
mhm,
away of. I've never been in big cities or lived in big cities. I've obviously visited, but in a small town, everybody says hello. Everybody is kind to one another. There's no, I don't see a lot of disrespecting in our community. Rather, when you go to a bigger community, so I think if
mhm,
they keep that small town, even though they have millions of people, I think they would do a lot
mhm.
better.
Beautifully said, good energy, and let's hope there's the hope in the world for the larger centers that seem to
Yeah,
grow at such a pace and to some extent lose some of what we have in a smaller town. Ultimately, what do you do for fun, Adam? Because you've achieved so much in your journey. What do you do for fun?
I don't have a lot of spare time to be honest. If I work 6 days a week in my store, and then 40 hours a week our council, so it's not a lot of time. Sundays are usually my free time, and I prepare for the week and get all my stuff done. I like watching hockey. Toronto Maple Leaf games are always on. I like hanging out with my friends, having a good time, and let loose
Mhm.
every now and then. I think that's so important.
Very fair. There's a let off some steam in some
Yes.
healthy way. And
Also,
three
one thing,
grown.
so yeah,
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
family time. That's super important to me. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And a heck of a segue, Adam, because my next question was around your three wonderful, independent, grown daughters.
Yes.
As a parent, that those that are perhaps starting that journey, if Adam Bureau has raised three independent, established women that are in control of their life and are doing well, as a parent, what's your advice to new parents?
You're definitely going to make mistakes, but it's okay.
Mhm,
It's not going to be the end of the world. And I think patience, time, teaching them responsibilities, teaching them how to be independent is huge. I always did that right from the start, is learning how to make their own food, learning how to do their laundry, all that kind of stuff really carries along. And to let them explore their journeys. If you want them to go
mhm,
play soccer or something and they're like, no, I'd rather do this, then let them go do that. Let it try. And just being there for them, I think, is the most important.
Well said. I think raising children today is probably more challenging than it ever has
Yeah.
been. We're all, not
Yeah.
even kids, we're all addicted to the device in our hand, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. I think we've become a species with the shortest attention span, perhaps in our entire existence. How do you come at life from a healthy way? Because you do have so much on your plate. And that question for me was somebody who has such a schedule. How do you find the time to take care about
For a healthy lifestyle, that's a hard
it?
one because there is not a lot of time just to pick up to go to the gym. Usually, my day starts at around 6:30, answering emails and stuff like that before I go to work, and then at night is preparing because that stuff always comes up. But what I try to do is get
Mhm.
out, go for walks, exercise at home. Not all the time. I should do more. I think we're probably all guilty of that. But
Fair
I do
enough.
try to eat right, and I movement. That's the big thing for me, is always trying to move. And that way
Mhm.
the heart keeps going.
Fair enough. And granted, three grown children, Adam, but you're still young enough. I'm curious what's on the horizon. Where's the bucket list items? What's
Yeah.
down the road that you really, no matter what, feel you must absolutely experience? Will you share some of that?
For me, I got to be honest with you, it's politics. I love everything about it. It's even the bad parts because there's a lot. Whether if, but for me, it's learning more, maybe going further in politics. But to me, that is my focus and my passion. I'm
Mhm.
always trying to think of better ways to help Cobourg, coming up with new ideas. It's hard, but to me, that is my passion. So I may sound like a dork, but I really do like it.
That's interesting. The public perception of politics perhaps has always been choppy, to say the least, but
Yeah.
especially in recent years, there's a lot of extremism happening and people are concerned and therefore they react. The division, Adam, that's one of the things that spooks me the most as a human today is witnessing how much division there is. How do you hold that as a politician?
One, I think where that division came from was the pandemic, starting out with the masks and the anti-maskers and all of that. I think that's really what started the divide. But to me, as a politician, I look at it this way. The one side has their feelings and thoughts and should be heard, and same with the other side. And if you treat them equally, let them say their message, whatever they want to say, as long as it's respectful on both sides. And and when people are like that, they really want to be heard and listened to. And I like to think that I give that opportunity. And not all both sides are wrong. A lot of them have good points, just not together. So to me,
Agreed. Agreed.
it's that listening to them, making sure they're heard, and letting them say their message.
Adam, I think that leaves us on an endpoint on a very up note because there's hope in the world. And to have your perspective as somebody who is on the political side, but also a business owner and who's been through some things in life and has become a better person because of it, that provides hope to our audience. And that's really the purpose of the Evolution Revolution. So I'm going to say thank you for your time. It's been inspiring. I always look forward to knowing more about you each time we connect. And this has been, to say the least, another version of that, Adam. Thank you for being with us here today.